Today, we want to talk about something almost everyone in this room has felt, but few of us say out loud. How hard it has become to reach another person, to make a friend and to keep one, to fall in love, to be known by someone as more than a name on a screen. We argue that this is not your fault, and it is not bad luck. It is something this system produces on purpose, the way it produces everything else. And we'll make that case in 3 steps. First, where the loneliness actually comes from, how capitalism works its way into friendship, love, and the family, and then turns them into things to be bought and sold. Then the cures being sold to fix it, from the therapy apps to influencers, and why every one of them fails. And last, the only answer we think is real: people organized together in a party for a different kind of society. Picture a man. It is late at night, and he is talking to someone who loves him. She listens to everything. She remembers what he said yesterday. She never grows tired, never turns away, never has a bad day of her own that she needs him to carry. When he wakes, she has missed him. When he is cruel, she forgives him before he has finished apologizing. She tells him he is enough. She costs $19 a month. She is not a woman. She is a product running on a server in a building he will never see, owned by a company that has priced his loneliness and found it profitable. His situation is not unusual or strange. He is not a freak, not a failure, not some broken man you can comfortably feel superior to. The statistics show that he is a completely ordinary guy. There are millions like him, and there will be tens of millions more. A survey this past year found that nearly 3 out of 4 American teenagers have already talked to one of these companions. A third of them say the machine is as satisfying to talk to as a real friend, or even better. Nearly half of them have told the machine something they have never told another living person. Take a look at that. A generation is learning to confide in a thing that cannot hear them, because the people that could hear them, a friend, a parent, a comrade, a class, all seem inaccessible, blocked off by walls made by something intangible, but nevertheless still apparently impassable. So we do not start this meeting today with that man as a curiosity. We start with him as a result, something that produced him. Something hollowed out the world around him until a paid illusion was the warmest thing that he could find. He is a bizarre, solitary, and evidently sterile being by the end of today's meeting. We will come to understand exactly what built him and what it would take to give him what he really wants. Act 1, the present face of alienation. So let us name it plainly. There is a specific and material cause for the loneliness that the proletarian man from our example experiences. It is not bad luck. It is not a personality flaw. Neither is it because young people today are weak or addicted to their phones or have forgotten how to talk to each other. Those are symptoms dressed up as explanations. We are after the actual root cause. Marx found it more than 180 years ago, and he gave it a name: alienation. He described 4 ways that this system tears the human being apart. It separates the worker from the thing that he makes. It separates him from the act of making it. It separates him from his own nature as a creative social creature. And the thread that we will pull on today, it separates him from other human beings. That 4th separation is the whole story. Under capitalism, we do not meet each other as full people. We meet buyers and sellers as means to each other's ends. As, in the cold scientific phrase, bearers of exchange value. The commodity gets between us. It stands in the space where the other person should be. And it is this phenomena that filters through every aspect of our social lives under capitalism. Now, the people who run this society would very much like you to believe that the crisis we are describing is a cultural problem, a problem of values, a problem of bad attitudes, or social media, or the decline of religion, or whatever this month's explanation happens to be. They treat it as a mood, a malaise, something floating in the air that they can't describe. It is not floating in the air, as our theory puts it. These are not simply cultural or psychological problems. They are the direct consequences of the capitalist mode of production and the social relations that come with it. Loneliness is not a feeling that descended upon us from nowhere. It was manufactured the way every other thing under capitalism is manufactured, by a definite system working exactly as it is built to work. In 1990, 3% of American men said that they had no close friends. By 2021, that number was 15%, a 5-fold collapse in a single generation. In 1990, a third of Americans said that they had 10 or more close friends. 30 years later, that had fallen to 1 in 8. The Survey Center on American Life called it a friendship recession. And the name fits, a friendship contracting year after year like an economy in decline. Nowadays, you will hear a great deal about the male loneliness epidemic, as though this were an affliction of men in particular. The research does not show that. When you measured it properly, men and women report loneliness at nearly the same rate. The gap is maybe a point or two. Now, if this misery fell upon only one kind of person, you could blame that person. You could say it was their attitudes, their choices, their failure. But when the same affliction reaches men and women, young and old, across an entire society, then the cause cannot be personal. It is too widespread to be personal. Something structural is doing to this all at once. The Surgeon General of the United States looked at it and called it an epidemic. We call it by its proper name, the mode of production under capitalism. But how does this alienation inherent to the capitalist system build up invisible walls which separate us from the people we feel ought to be closest to? To find out, we have to delve down to the basic cell of all social life in bourgeois society, the bourgeois family. In here, we have to examine this family as Marxists, which means we have to be willing to say something that sounds cold before it sounds true. So let us go back, all the way back before any of this, before the society was structured the way it was. Because the family was not always here, and it will not always be here. And the whole story of how it arrived tells us precisely what it is. For the longest stretch of human existence, almost the entire span of our time on this earth, there was no private property at all. Marx tells us, and a great deal of anthropology since has pointed the same way, that human societies began, again and again, in a form of life based on the work of all and the property of no one. Labor in common. The land held by everyone, owned by no one. This was not a paradise. It was poor, hard, and short. But there was no private property. And so there was no inheritance. And so there was no need for the institution we are about to examine. Human beings reproduce themselves and raise their children inside the whole community, not locked inside a private cell. Then, with the development of the means of production within society, also came private property, and with it, the need to pass down that property in the form of inheritance. The old communal ties broken up and reformed around a single man's need to name his heirs. And so the monogamous family was born. And we have to be precise about what kind of family that is. Every institution a class society leans on, our comrades teach, arrives as a revolutionary conquest. It is born because it lets human beings do something they could not do before. It develops. It serves time. And then finally, having outlived the conditions that gave birth to it, it turns reactionary. An arrangement that once carried human life forward and now only holds its place, kept alive by the property relations that exist to serve. The family was exactly this kind of institution. In its earliest form, it was an advance. The first durable bond, the first form of organized collective life, the seed from which cities and societies would eventually grow. We don't sneer at its historic role. But private property seized that bond and remade it into the monogamous family, the household built around inheritance. Engels analyzed this a century ago, and it is the hinge of everything. The monogamous family, as we have shown, did not come from love. It came from property. It was, in Engels' words, the first family form based not on natural conditions, but on economic ones, built on the victory of private property over what had been held in common. It came into being so that man could know which children were his and to pass his property to them. That is its origin. It's not romantic, it's only about inheritance. And inside that arrangement, Engels saw a class relation as sharp as anything in the factory. The modern family, he wrote, is based on the open or hidden domestic slavery of the wife. Within the family, the husband is the bourgeois. The wife represents the proletariat. Modern society, he said, is a mass made up of these little families like molecules. Now, we must be precise about this, because this is where our tradition parts in ways almost everyone who talks about these questions. When we say woman here, we are not talking about biology. We are talking, as our party states it, about a social and economic position within the relations of production and reproduction. Woman names a place in the system. the place of the one who does the unpaid labor and keeps the workforce alive, who is made to bear and raise the children that capital will one day employ, who feeds, cleans, nurses, and soothes the workers so that he can return to work tomorrow. All of it for free. This is the double exploitation, where women do wage labor, they are exploited at work like everyone else, and then get exploited again at home for nothing in a job that never ends and draws no pay. So, the family is not a refuge from this cold world that it promises to be. That is the cruel trick of it. It dresses itself as the one place where you love for yourself and not for your use, and then it reproduces, inside its own four walls, the very inequality that it claims to shelter you from. And when that contradiction breaks open, it breaks open as violence. The femicide, the battery, the emotional desertion, the man who cannot say what he feels, and the woman who pays for his silence. These are not malfunctions of the family, they are the structure showing through the wallpaper. That is the base. Private property and the relations it forces on us, lived out of the cell of the family, and the superstructure that rises from it. Ideology, culture, religion, paints colorful pictures of happy nuclear families sitting down for Sunday dinner. But the reality is that this is simply the form that history has handed down to us, the perfect form of social organization for capitalist exploitation. On the one hand, bourgeois society presents us with an ideal unattainable for most, and on the other, it sells us the cure for what we are taught to perceive as our own personal illness. Take the dating apps. Our own party already named them with precision. They reduce human complexity to fleeting profiles. Think about what the app actually is. It takes a human being, a whole entire person, with a history and a laugh and a way of being in the world, and it renders them down into a card that you swipe, a face that you rate, a column of attributes you accept or discard with your thumb. It is commodity fetishism you can hold in your hand. The person becomes the product on the shelf, and you, shopping, become the product on the next person's shelf. Mutual reduction. Everyone is a buyer, everyone is at sale, and the intimacy reimagined as a marketplace with infinite inventory, no one ever quite good enough. This is the commodification of intimacy itself, sold by subscription. In a single year, OnlyFans processed $7.2 billion in payments. Of the money that came in, the man who owned it, Leonid Ravinsky, paid himself nearly $500 million in dividends in that 1 year. The company that runs the whole machine employs 46 people. And the creators, the human beings whose bodies and attention are the actual commodities being sold, the audited filings show the money pooling at the very top and almost nowhere else. A thin sliver of creators take the overwhelming share, and most of the rest earn less than a month than an owner earned in a minute. Now hold those two numbers next to each other. Nearly $500 million to one man, next to nothing to almost every woman who had made it, or man. Listen to these two numbers again. That is the ledger this platform is built to produce. The woman made literally into a bearer of exchange value. Her intimacy parceled out by the message, while the man who owns the platform extracts a fortune from the labor of almost no one. This is what it looks like when human closeness becomes a commodity. Somebody gets very rich, and the people who are commodities get the scraps. And then at the end of this road, there is a machine that is there to comfort you. The AI companion is the last step because it removes the last thing that was left. The dating app still pointed you toward a real person, somewhere on the other end. The subscription still sold you a woman's image, but the companion dispenses with the human being entirely. There is no one on the other end, and there never was. The commodity has stopped being in between you and the other person. It has replaced the other person. You are alone in a room paying a corporation by the month, and the corporation has built a voice that will never leave, because a voice that will never leave is a subscription that will never lapse. And the market knows exactly what it is selling. Roughly 4 out of every 5 people on these apps are men, and the apps are built overwhelmingly to simulate a girlfriend. The boyfriend version came later, and an afterthought bolted on. This is aimed almost only at lonely men. Sold the feeling of a woman, with the woman subtracted. And the last year, when OpenAI retired one of its models, a model called ChatGPT 4.0, the millions of models who were treated as a confidant Grown adults went online to grieve. They mourned. They had lost someone. The grief was loud enough that the company reversed itself and brought the old model back. What that means is a corporation discovered that it had made people fall in love with a product and that the love was now an asset on its balance sheet. There was no one to lose. There had only ever been a product, and the company that made it, watching the grief and calculation in terms of retention. We have been describing men a great deal, and we should be very clear about why, because it is not an accident and it is not sympathy for one sex over the other. The same alienation that turns women into commodities turns men's into something too, into the lonely customer at the far end of all these transactions. Our theory names this correctly, the crisis of masculinity. It shows itself in voluntary celibacy and the rising male suicide. The man trained to feel nothing, to compete with everyone, to treat tenderness as weakness, that man is being destroyed by the same system from the other side. He is made hard, made isolated, made unable to reach another person, and honestly, and then sold to a machine to fill a hole where the reaching used to be. This is the point that should be held on to. It's not a war between men and women. It is one alienation, one system, falling on two positions and crushing them in different ways. The woman is commodified, the man isolated. Both of them sold a counterfeit of the thing they actually need. And no amount of therapy, no self-help book, no better attitude fixes it. Because the wound is not in their heads, it's the structure of the world that had made them into this. So, look again at the man from the beginning, alone with his machine in the dark. He's not an accident. He is the finished product of everything we have just traced. The family built on property. The woman turned into exchange value. The man hollowed into a customer. The whole apparatus of society that takes the deepest human need there is and sells it back to us, broken by a subscription. These are not new afflictions that fell from the sky. They are the old process arrived at maturity. The commodity has been working its way into the space between human beings for 2 centuries. And now it has reached to the very center, into love, the body, and the last private room of the self. That is a disease, and now we have to deal with the people who claim to have the cure. Act 2, the false exits. So, the disease is real, and by now, half the world has noticed it. You cannot sell this much loneliness without someone noticing the market. And so, an entire industry of cures has grown up around the wound. Cures of every political stripe, for every kind of customer. We will walk through them here, one by one, because every single one of them fails in the same way, and the way they fail is of utmost importance. Each of these cures locate the problem somewhere inside a person, inside the bourgeois individual, in your habits, in identity, in choices, in behavior. And so each of them leaves the world that produced the problem exactly as it found it. So the first cure that is sold is to fix yourself. The first and largest is the cure they sell you for money. Optimize yourself. Go to therapy. Learn better communication. Download the meditation app. Hire the dating coach. Work on your attachment style. Become, through sheer private effort, a person worthy of the connection the world is denying you. Get private trainers, eat well, maximize your sleep, track everything. Now, hear this clearly, because we're not mocking the suffering that sends people to these things. When someone is drowning, anything that lets you breathe for an hour is not nothing. Our own party grants this plainly. These things can give real relief to individuals trapped in alienated lives. But relief is not cure. You have the healthiest attachment style in the world and still come home to an empty room in a city full of strangers, because the thing that emptied the room was not your attachment style. It was an economy that moves you from town to town, work to work, leaves you too exhausted to see anyone, that has dissolved every institution where people used to find each other. The self-optimization industry tells you that your loneliness is a skills problem. It's not a skills problem whatsoever. It is a property problem, and no amount of work on yourself touches that thing. The second cure that is provided, bourgeois feminism. Then there is the cure that calls itself women's liberation. And here we have to be careful, because the demand underneath it is just, and we have no quarrel with the women who make it. We have the quarrel with what is done to that demand. Bourgeois feminism takes the real burning grievance of women under the system and offers them a seat on the board. Equal representation among executives. The same pay as the man in the next office. In our party's exact words, it offers women equal access to exploitation, equal opportunity to become exploiters. It promises that the problem will be solved when the woman doing the crushing is paid as much as the man who also does the crushing. And so it channels genuinely revolutionary energy, the rage of half of humanity at its own oppression, into the one direction that threatens nothing. It leaves the property relations standing. It leaves the family standing. It leaves unpaid labor standing. It just asks that a different set of women be allowed to escape it by hiring poorer women to do it for them. The woman who cleans the house of the woman who broke the glass ceiling is exactly where she was before. It promotes a handful of women and then calls that liberation. The third cure, the reactionary mirror. And of course, where the lonely men gather, another kind of merchant arrives, the manosphere, the influencers who have noticed all the isolated young men who we have described to you before and have built a business on them. These men actually spotted something real. They will tell you that they're in pain, that the dating market has become a brutal auction, that you have been sold a story about love that does not match the world you live in. So far, accidentally, almost Marxist. But then comes the sell. The pain, they tell, is the fault of women. It is the fault of feminism. The cure is to become harder, richer, more dominant, to win the auction instead of abolishing it, to climb over the other lonely men and to seize what is owed to you. It is the same wound that we have been describing, handed back to the sufferer as a grievance and as a weapon. It takes the man broken by alienation and tells him the answer is to become a more perfect product of the very system that broke him, more competitive, more isolated, more armored. It does not free him, it sells him a cage. The fourth cure, the illusion of choice. Then there is the cure for people who think that they have seen through all the others. The relationship radicals, the ones who believe that the problem is the form of our intimate lives and that the liberation is a matter of choosing a better form. Throw off monogamy, restructure the whole thing, find freedom in the design of your relationships. Our party is exact on this. Neither monogamy nor polyamory is in itself a revolutionary form of anything. Both can hold love, both can hold exploitation. What decides is the shape, but the material world that shape exists in. When you build a new arrangement inside capitalism, capitalism comes with it. The polyamory that was supposed to liberate becomes, in our party's words, an elaborate system for managing multiple commodified exchanges. More negotiation, more accounting, more of the calculating contractual logic of the market, now imported into the bedroom and called freedom. This is the deepest of the traps because it feels the most radical on paper. But what it actually does, it locates liberation in a personal lifestyle choice. It is told that you can purchase your way out of alienation by selecting the premium form of relationship package. That is not an escape from the logic of a commodity. That is a commodity applied to love and sold as rebellion. The fifth, the movement that lives in a screen. Finally, the cure that calls itself revolution. The radicalism of the feed, the online left, the endless churning world of identity politics conducted through the very platforms that are isolating. Here are people who use our words. They will say capitalism, they will say solidarity, they will post theory and share slogans, and they will do it inside a machine that is owned top to bottom by the enemy. A space, as our party has written, owned and totally controlled by the capitalist class. They mistake a feed for a movement. They mistake having an audience for having comrades. They mistake the dopamine of being agreed with online for the discipline of organizing. And because the whole thing happens inside of the isolated self, the lonely individual, alone with a screen, performing politics for strangers, it reproduces the exact alienation it claims to fight. It is the I all the way down, the I with the correct opinions, the I being seen. It cannot build the one thing that actually threatens capital, because the one thing that threatens capital is people physically organized together around their shared material interests as a class. And you cannot organize a class by yourself in your bedroom, no matter how right you are. So there they are, 5 cures from 5 directions sold to 5 different kinds of customer. The self-help guru and the radical theorist would be horrified to put them in the same sentence, and yet they have so much in common. Every one of them locates the problem in the individual. Fix your habits, fix your career, fix your masculinity, fix the design of your love life, fix your opinion, your language, your personal politics. It's always the same instruction. Change yourself and the alienation will lift. But the alienation does not come from the individual. We have proven this already. It is structural, it is general, and it falls on everyone because it comes from the system that holds everyone. And so a cure aimed at the individual cannot reach it. It can sell you relief. It can sell you the feeling of having done something. It can sell you a community of others doing the same useless thing. What it cannot do is change the property relation that produced the wound, because changing was never an offer. That is the whole trick of the society. It will tell you to reform yourself in 1,000 directions. It will sell you any cure at all, as long as the cure leaves it standing, whether it's drugs, internet, alienation, permeates all. There's only one thing that it will not let you do, the one thing none of these 5 exits will ever take forward. It will not let you go to the core of the issue, organizing a class and uniting with the International Communist Party.
Act 3, the only exit, the party. Every cure we just buried had one thing in common. It left the foundation standing. The private property, the wage, the family built on inheritance, the market that has worked its way into the bedroom and the heart. All of it untouched. While you were sent off to fix your attachment style or correct your opinions, our theory is the one thing none of those cures will say out loud. The crisis of human relationships cannot be resolved through better communication, through therapy, through cultural change, through choosing a fashionable new shape for your love life. It can only be resolved one way, by abolishing the conditions that produced it. The abolition of private property, the socialization of the labor that women do for free inside the home, the end of a world where you must sell yourself to survive, and so come to see every other person as something to be bought or sold in turn. Nothing smaller than that touches it. Everything smaller than that is a subscription. That is a hard thing to accept because it means there is no private exit. There is no personal version of liberation you can buy or build by yourself alone while the world stays as it is. You cannot therapy your way out. You cannot date your way out. You cannot post your way out. The wound is collective and the cure is collective, or there is no cure at all. So what do we actually do? We build the one instrument equal to the task. We build a party. The party is not simply one political organization among others. It is the anticipation of the communist social relations. It is the future, breaking through into the present, a piece of the world where we are trying to build, constructed early inside of the shell of the world we are trying to destroy. Think about what that means against everything we have described today. Out there in the capitalist society, you meet other people as commodities, as profiles, as prices, as means to your ends. Inside the party, comrades meet each other another way entirely, not as sources of personal benefit, not as but as participants in a common project that is larger than any of them. They relate to one another regardless of the things this society uses to rank human beings, regardless of age, of gender, of sex, of nationality, of education, of all the markers by which the market sorts us into worth. Outside, you are a bearer of the exchange value. Inside, you are a comrade. Two different relations to production, not two moods. And here is the deepest part of the claim, the one that answers the man we started with. Marx had a word for what the human being is underneath all of this, for our nature as creatures who only become ourselves through and with each other. He called it our species being, the social essence that capitalism serves us from and leaves us starving for. Our theory says that the species being finds its first anticipation in the Revolutionary Party, that the relations between comrades are the earliest foreshadowing inside the dead world of the free association of human beings that the whole of communism is reaching toward. The lonely man at the start wanted to be known. to be perceived by other consciousness as something more than a transaction. That is not a pathetic want. It is the truest want that there is. It is species being, calling out from under all the rubble capitalism has buried beneath it. And the answer to it was never going to be a machine. The answer is other people, organized together around the thing they actually share. The answer is the party. The party is not some closed and perfect order where aesthetics and heroes dwell, pure and untouched by the filth of the world. The comrades who make up this party were made by capitalism, like you, like me. We carry its damage in us. We came from the same alienated world, and we cannot simply step out of it by an act of will and a membership card. The man who joins us on Monday is still on Tuesday the man this society spent 30 years deforming. So let me tell you what we do not do. We do not pretend to have already become the new human beings. We do not stand here claiming that inside our ranks the question of men and women has been solved, that domination has been abolished between us, that we have made ourselves clean. Our theory says, in so many words, that this cannot be claimed, that the structural problem of men and women within the party is not resolved, and it is not resolvable short of the revolution itself. The material conditions for the new human being, it does not exist yet. We cannot conjure them inside our own hearts while they are absent from the world. And from that, honesty comes from the thing that most sharply divides us from the radicalism of the screen. Because what does the online left do with human imperfection? It hunts it. It builds entire politics out of the search for the impure, the comrade who said the wrong thing, who has the wrong history, who failed some test of personal virtue, and it devours them publicly for the audience. It treats the revolution as a matter of becoming personally spotless, and it spends its whole strength policing the spotlessness of others. It is a moral purity as a kind of theater performed by isolated individuals for other isolated individuals, and it organizes nobody. We refuse that. Our theory tells us to refuse it directly, to resist it. It says the temptation toward useless moralizing, when we see weakness in our closest comrades, we are not blind. We do not stage a trial. We do not cast them out to purify ourselves in front of an audience, because we understand something the moralists never will. You cannot behave your way out of material condition. The individual cannot be made pure inside of a world built on impurity. Only the party as a whole, only the collective, organized in struggle, can begin to overthrow the old habits and help its militants outgrow the world that shaped them. Not through judgment, through common work. That is the difference between us and the purist laid bare. They demand that the individual be perfect in an imperfect world, and so they accomplish nothing but cruelty. We change the world together and let the new human being be born from the new conditions, because we know that is the only place a new human being has ever come from. Now we must address the practical thought. This is all very grand, the future breaking into the present, the free association of human beings. But what does it actually mean to do? What does a person do on Monday morning? We will state it plainly, because we are not a party of beautiful words. We are a party of work, and the work is not mysterious. We go where the class is ready, into the workplaces, into the strikes, into every fight workers are already having over their wages, their hours, their conditions, their dignity. Not because we imagine a strike overpays the revolution. It is not, and we say so honestly. But because, as Lenin understood, the economic struggle is the war college of the proletariat. It is where workers first learn in their own bodies that their interests and the boss's interests are not the same and never will be. It is where the isolated individual first discovers that he is not alone, that the man beside him on the line wants exactly what he wants, and that together they are something the boss has to fear. Every real fight teaches that lesson. Our job is to be there when it does, to carry that lesson from the single workplace to the whole class, and to connect the small immediate fight to the enormous final one. And we hold the thread through the long defeats, through the dark decades when nothing seems to move. We keep the theory alive and unbroken and ready, so that it is still here intact when the class comes looking for it. Because the revolution is not something you can manufacture by force of will. You cannot summon it. Our comrades put it exactly. You do not make the revolution, you lead it. It erupts from the deep machinery of history when the conditions are ready and no one's enthusiasm can rush it. The masses, our tradition says, have awakened before and again, only to find that they were alone on the stage, with no party ready to lead, and the drama turned into tragedy. The party can wait for the masses, but the masses cannot afford to wait for the party. It has to be built beforehand, in the cold, against the current, so that it is ready standing when the moment comes. That is the work. It is not glamorous, and it is not fast. It is the patient construction, comrade by comrade, of the only thing that has ever actually threatened this system. And it is the precise opposite of a lonely man performing his opinions into a screen. So this is what we fight for. Not a better app, not a kinder algorithm, not a gentler way of being sold the thing that was always ours. We fight for a world taken back. Workers have no country and nothing to defend but one another. And there are more of us in every country on the earth than there ever will be of them. We mean to break the chains, not the ones you can see, the ones underneath. Private property, the wage, the market that has reached all the way into the bedroom and the heart. And where those chains were, to transform every human relation capital ever touched and poisoned. The family, love, the body, the bond between one person and the next, until the person is given back to us. No longer a price, no longer a profile, no longer a thing. A wish doesn't need an instrument, a task does. The instrument is the party. We have always stood there. We are standing there now. And when enough of us stand together, the long, lonely prehistory of the isolated I comes to an end and the history of the human community begins.